You think he's moved on. No, he's just moved up. And what he's doing right now isn't about forgetting the past, it's about building a future bold enough to silence the noise. When a man disappears into silence, the world rushes to its conclusions. They say he's hiding. They say he's shrinking. They say he's scared to face what broke him. But silence is misunderstood by those who have never had to rebuild themselves from the inside out. Silence is not the space you choose when you are weak. It is the space you choose when strength is no longer optional. When life has emptied you, when people have drained you, when heartbreak has cracked something deep inside you, silence becomes the only place where you can hear your own soul again. It becomes the room where you relearn how to stand. And make no mistake, this silence isn't retreat, it's recalibration, it's recovery, it's the quiet before a comeback the world isn't even ready for. See, silence is where he is stripping away every fake layer the world convinced him to wear. The expectations, the noise, the opinions, the pressure, every voice that once drowned out his own. Gone. In that quiet, he starts asking the questions he's been too distracted, too exhausted, too wounded to ask. What do I want? Who am I becoming? What am I carrying that isn't mine to hold? You can't answer questions like these in chaos, surrounded by people who want you to stay the way they remember you. Silence gives him space to see the truth, without distortion, without interruptions, without the weight of someone else's judgment. And this truth, it changes him. It rearranges him. It gives him clarity he couldn't get during the noise. This is where his vision sharpens, his purpose awakens, and his heart begins to beat differently, not for approval anymore, but for alignment. People only see the absence. They never see the internal work. They don't see him picking up the pieces of a life that felt shattered. They don't see him rethinking his patterns, evolving his habits, releasing old stories that kept him small. They don't see him confronting his mistakes, admitting his flaws, taking responsibility for the things he once avoided. That's because real growth doesn't happen publicly. It happens in private battles, private breakdowns, private breakthroughs. The world sees a man who ghosted. What they don't see is the man learning self-discipline, the man mastering his emotions, the man turning his weaknesses into weapons. Silence is not running away from life. It's running toward a version of himself he has never met before, a version he desperately needs to become. And transformation this deep, it can't happen under spotlight. It happens in shadows. And here's the part most people don't understand. Silence requires courage. It takes courage to step away from familiar chaos. It takes courage to cut off voices you've grown comfortable with, even if they were destroying you. It takes courage to look at your reflection and accept that the man staring back isn't finished, he's under construction. Silence forces him to face what he's been avoiding. It forces him to feel what he's been suppressing. It forces him to let go of the people, places, and patterns that were never meant for the next chapter. That kind of internal work is not for the weak. It's not for those who crave distraction. It's not for those who fear solitude. Silence is for the ones brave enough to confront their own demons and still decide to rise. He's not hiding. He's healing. And that healing demands distance, disciplines, boundaries, and an unshakable commitment to becoming better than he was yesterday. But the world doesn't see the rise until it's finished. They only see the silence and assume something's wrong. They don't realize that silence is the birthplace of strength, the training ground of resilience, the laboratory of reinvention. It's where he builds mental armor. It's where he replaces confusion with direction. It's where he turns old wounds into wisdom. And when he steps out of that silence, not rushed, not pressured, but ready, people will finally understand that the quiet wasn't the end of him, it was the making of him, because silence isn't running. Silence is rising. It's the foundation of the comeback, the birthplace of the transformation, the quiet storm before the new version of him walks back into the world with a purpose so sharp. It cuts through every doubt ever spoken about him. Healing is one of the most misunderstood processes a person can go through. The world looks at a man who slows down, steps back, or closes himself off, and they whisper he's broken. They assume he's fragile. They assume he's spiraling. They assume he's struggling to keep it together. But healing is not the breaking of a man, it is the rebuilding of him. Healing is not a collapse, it is a reconstruction. And the truth is, healing requires a level of bravery most people will never understand. It requires the courage to stop pretending you're fine. It requires the strength to feel emotions you've buried for years. It requires the maturity to face pain instead of running from it. That's not weakness, that's warfare. And every man who has chosen this path knows just how much fight it takes to turn inward and fix what the world never sees. Healing demands that he confront the parts of himself he once avoided, the insecurities, the disappointments, the heartbreaks that he never acknowledged because he thought ignoring them made him stronger. But real strength isn't in avoidance. It's in awareness. Healing is the moment he stops pushing everything down and finally lets himself feel the weight of what he's been carrying. That weight is heavier than any physical burden. It's the weight of expectations, rejection, loss, betrayal, regret. And for the first time, he doesn't numb it, hide it, or deny it. He sits with it, he studies it, he understands it. This is where the real work begins, in the silent rooms of self-reflection, where every emotion is raw and every truth is sharp. But this work transforms him. It cracks him open so the light can get in. It teaches him to rebuild from a place of honesty instead of ego. Healing forces him to unlearn everything society taught him about being strong. Society tells men not to cry, not to feel, not to break. Society teaches them to carry everything alone, to grind through pain, to stand tall even when the ground beneath them is falling apart. But healing demands something different. It asks him to redefine strength, to understand that vulnerability is not defeat but discipline, to admit that asking for help doesn't make him weak, it makes him human. Healing teaches him that strength isn't about acting tough, it's about becoming whole. There's nothing weak about wanting to be better. There's nothing fragile about wanting to grow. There's nothing soft about refusing to pass your pain on to the next chapter of your life. This is the strength of someone who refuses to let trauma dictate their future. And while the world assumes silence means he's losing control, the opposite is true. Healing gives him control for the first time in a long time. It gives him clarity. It gives him emotional balance. It gives him the ability to understand his reactions instead of being controlled by them. It helps him recognize patterns that once trapped him, people who once drained him, habits that once sabotaged him. Healing is strategic. It sharpens his mind. It strengthens his heart. It steadies his spirit. When he chooses to heal, he's choosing to stop repeating cycles that hurt him. He's choosing to break generational wounds. He's choosing to protect his future self from suffering the same fate as his past self. That is not weakness, that's mastery. Mastery over his emotions, mastery over his behaviors, mastery over his life. What most people don't see is how exhausting healing can be. It's not glamorous. It's not inspirational quotes and peaceful music. It's late nights where he questions everything he thought he knew about himself. It's mornings where he wakes up emotionally drained but still chooses to keep going. It's moments when old memories resurface, not to torture him, but to teach him something he wasn't ready to learn before. It's the constant battle between who he used to be and who he's trying to become. Healing isn't linear. Some days he feels powerful, other days he feels lost. Some days he moves forward, other days he takes steps back. But every day he chooses to continue. And that consistency, that discipline, that refusal to quit, that strength in its purest form. And slowly, through all the discomfort, through all the emotional work, through all the nights where he fought battles no one else knew he was fighting, something begins to shift. He starts understanding himself with a clarity he's never had. He starts loving himself in ways he never learned. He starts forgiving himself for mistakes he once thought defined him. Healing gives him peace where there used to be chaos. Healing gives him direction where there used to be confusion. Healing gives him power where there used to be pain, and the world may not notice it yet, but something incredible is happening inside him. He's not becoming weaker, he's becoming wiser. He's not softening, he's strengthening. Healing is not the end of him. Healing is the rebirth of him. The past has a way of gripping a man by the throat, especially when he tries to move forward. Memories he never asked for return uninvited. Mistakes he thought he outgrew whisper in his ear. Pain he thought he buried resurfaces like unfinished business. Most people assume the only way to heal is to forget. They believe that strength comes from pretending nothing ever happened. But that's not real healing, that's emotional amputation. The truth is, the past can't be erased. It can't be rewritten, undone, or deleted. What happened, happened, but what he does with it, that's where power is born. Instead of trying to burn the past down, he is learning how to take the ashes and build something new. Instead of trying to act like none of it mattered, he's discovering that every scar, every failure, every heartbreak has a purpose hidden inside it. See, there was a time when he hated his own history. He hated the decisions he made. He hated the moments he stayed quiet when he should have spoken. He hated the times he trusted the wrong people, loved too deeply, or held onto situations that were never meant for him. He thought those choices weakened him, made him less valuable, made him unworthy. But now, in the clarity of reflection, he realizes those moments were not evidence of his weakness, they were evidence of his humanity. They were lessons disguised as disappointments. They were growth hidden behind pain. The past didn't break him, it trained him, it sharpened him, it woke him up, and instead of trying to outrun it, he's finally embracing it. Because you can't outgrow what you refuse to understand. Repurposing the past means studying it instead of resenting it. It means asking yourself, what was this trying to teach me? Instead of why did this happen to me? It means looking at every setback with a different lens. That heartbreak taught him what love should and should not feel like. That betrayal taught him how to protect his energy. That mistake taught him how to listen to his intuition. That loss taught him how precious peace really is. Every moment that once broke him is becoming the blueprint for how he moves now. Knowledge doesn't come from perfection, it comes from experience. It comes from surviving. It comes from getting knocked down and having the courage to rise again. Repurposing the past means refusing to waste the wisdom pain gave him. And with that shift comes power, real power, the kind that doesn't come from ego, anger, or revenge, the kind that comes from understanding. He no longer reacts with the same blindness he once did because the past has trained him to see patterns before they repeat. He no longer chases the wrong people because the past showed him what it feels like to be undervalued. He no longer stays in places where he is tolerated because the past taught him the cost of shrinking himself. The past becomes his compass rather than his chain. It guides him instead of haunting him. It strengthens him rather than suffocating him. When he repurposes his past, he stops being a prisoner of it. He becomes the architect of his future. And the beautiful thing is this: repurposing the past doesn't mean glorifying it. It doesn't mean pretending it was all necessary or fair. It doesn't mean he deserved what happened. It simply means he refuses to let it define him in the wrong way. He won't let heartbreak turn him cold. He won't let betrayal turn him bitter. He won't let disappointment make him hopeless. He's not trying to become the person his pain pushed him to be. He's becoming the person his growth is calling him to be. That's the difference. He's not shaped by trauma anymore. He's shaped by transformation. The past still exists, but it no longer controls him. It informs him, it teaches him, it strengthens him, but it does not imprison him. And now, with this new perspective, he walks differently. He carries himself with a quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing he has survived storms most people never even noticed. He speaks with intention because he's learned the cost of careless words. He chooses wisely because he has lived through the consequences of choosing blindly. The past remains a part of him, yes, but it is no longer the part that weighs him down. It's the part that lifts him. It's the part that reminds him he's capable, resilient, and built from something deeper than pain. His past hasn't been erased. It's been repurposed, turned into strength, turned into wisdom, turned into guidance, turned into fuel for the next version of him. Too often, people confuse talking with progress. They believe that if you explain yourself enough, others will understand and life will unfold the way you want. But the truth is, words without action are empty. People will listen, judge, and forget, and you will have wasted your energy on things that don't matter. He has learned this the hard way. He has learned that the more he explains, the more he dilutes his power. The more he defends himself, the more he feeds doubt instead of faith. Focus beats explanation every time. Action speaks louder than justification. And the man who truly wants to rise understands that moving silently with purpose is far more effective than screaming for understanding. Focus requires discipline. It demands that he ignore the noise, the opinions, the criticisms, and the distractions that once consumed him. Every time he feels the urge to clarify his decisions to someone who doesn't even care about his journey, he reminds himself that his energy is currency. Wasting it on explanations depletes him. Instead, he pours it into his growth, his craft, his goals, and the life he is building. Focus transforms him. Focus sharpens him. Focus turns ambition into results. And every time he prioritizes action over words, he reinforces his own belief in himself, and that is more powerful than any validation he could ever receive from the outside world. People will always speculate. They will always form opinions. They will always try to tell him what he should be doing, who he should be becoming, and how he should feel about the past. But the truth is, no one walks in his shoes. No one carries his history. No one bears his burdens or sees his vision. Explaining his path to everyone else is not necessary. The world doesn't need to understand his journey. What matters is that he understands it. What matters is that he stays on course regardless of the noise. Focus is his armor. Focus is his strategy. Focus is the quiet refusal to let someone else's perspective dictate his destiny. Focus also means choosing results over reactions. Instead of getting caught up in arguments, debates, and endless explanations, he chooses to act. He chooses to build. He chooses to show up every day, even when it's hard, even when it feels like no one is watching. Results are the proof of his work, the evidence of his discipline, and the demonstration of his transformation. And when others finally notice, they will see it in the consistency, in the quality, in the strength of his presence. They will see it in the achievements born from relentless effort rather than empty words. That is how focus eclipses explanation through tangible, undeniable progress. Focus requires patience, too. The world wants quick answers, instant gratification, immediate validation. But he has learned that real growth takes time. Real transformation cannot be rushed. Every day he invests in himself, every step he takes toward mastery, every moment he chooses preparation over reaction, he builds something permanent. Focus teaches him endurance. Focus teaches him timing. Focus teaches him that some things are worth the wait, and that results achieved quietly are often the most powerful. The man who understands this does not chase applause. He chases excellence, knowing that recognition will follow naturally when the work is done. Finally, focus beats explanation because it protects his peace. Words can be twisted, intentions misunderstood, and motives misrepresented, but action cannot be faked. Action cannot be misread if it is consistent and deliberate. By concentrating on what matters, his growth, his discipline, his purpose, he shields himself from the chaos of external judgment. Every step forward, every quiet victory reinforces his confidence, fortifies his resolve, and deepens his resilience. He no longer needs to defend himself to the world, because the life he is creating speaks louder than any argument ever could. Focus is not silence out of fear, it is silence out of power. It is the choice to let results tell the story while the doubters remain in the dark, waiting for explanations that will never come. When he steps back, people assume he no longer cares. When he chooses distance, the world whispers that he's cold, detached, or disconnected. But distance does not equal indifference. Distance is a tool, a strategy, a conscious choice to protect what matters most: his energy, his focus, his growth. Life is full of relationships, obligations, and distractions that drain instead of nourish. And just like a gardener prunes a tree, a man who is serious about growth learns to prune his life to remove what no longer serves him, to cut away toxicity, to create space for what will allow him to flourish. That pruning requires courage, and it requires clarity, because removing someone from your life doesn't mean you hate them, it means you value yourself. Distance is about boundaries. It's about understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people thrive on chaos, conflict, and drama. Some people take energy instead of giving it. Some people are comfortable keeping you small while they expand their own influence. Choosing distance is not a personal attack. It is a declaration of self-respect. It is the realization that to grow, he cannot let every distraction, every emotional drain, or every negative influence dictate the pace of his progress. Distance is a shield. It is a declaration of independence from the noise and interference that could derail him. And those who misunderstand it are simply witnessing a necessary transformation. Pruning also requires discernment. He must examine his connections, his environments, his routines, and ask one critical question: does this serve the life I am building? If the answer is no, then it must be removed or at least kept at a distance. This is not cruelty, this is wisdom. He understands that growth is not always comfortable. It is not always polite. It does not always satisfy the expectations of others. Growth is selective, intentional, and sometimes lonely. But this loneliness is not emptiness, it is preparation. It is space for reflection, strategy, and alignment. The world may mistake his quiet as a retreat, but it is, in fact, a recalibration. It is a moment of clarity, not a sign of coldness. Distance allows him to focus on himself without distraction. It gives him the mental and emotional bandwidth to confront his past, plan his future, and sharpen his skills. It allows him to examine what he truly wants without the clutter of outside opinions. In those moments of solitude, he discovers the depth of his ambition, the resilience of his spirit, and the magnitude of his potential. He begins to understand that growth cannot coexist with constant interference, and peace cannot exist alongside persistent chaos. The distance is intentional, and its purpose is profound, to preserve the integrity of the man he is becoming, even when it means the world doesn't understand his choices. And distance is also a lesson in patience. He cannot force people to understand him, and he cannot force the world to respect his process. But by keeping his focus on what matters, his goals, his discipline, his growth, he teaches something far more powerful than words ever could. He demonstrates that he is no longer dependent on external validation. He demonstrates that he can thrive without constant approval or attention. He demonstrates that his value is inherent and not dictated by the approval of those around him. Distance sharpens his autonomy and reminds him that self-respect is not negotiable, and this, ultimately, is the most profound lesson of all. Finally, distance is about prioritization. It is about making a choice, the choice to invest in what grows him instead of what drains him, the choice to surround himself with energy that fuels his progress rather than energy that diminishes it. He understands that some people, places, and habits cannot coexist with the vision he has for himself, and pruning is not rejection, it is preparation. It is clearing the way for relationships, opportunities, and experiences that align with his purpose. He is not abandoning life, he is refining it. He is not shutting people out. He is opening space for the right ones to enter. And in this selective process, he discovers that distance, far from being indifference, is a mark of discernment, courage, and unwavering commitment to his growth. People assume that when a man steps back, goes quiet, or changes, he has moved on. They say he's over it, or he's forgotten. But the truth is far more powerful. He hasn't moved on, he's leveled up. Moving on implies leaving something behind and forgetting it. Leveling up is not about erasing the past. It's about transforming it into fuel for something greater. It's about taking every setback, every heartbreak, every challenge, and using it as a stepping stone. It's about taking the man he was and creating the man he should have been all along. Leveling up is intentional, it is strategic, and it is unstoppable when done with purpose. Leveling up requires a shift in mindset. He no longer measures his worth by the opinions of others, by past failures, or by temporary emotions. He understands that progress isn't linear, and growth isn't defined by how quickly he recovers, but by the depth of transformation he achieves. He evaluates every experience through the lens of personal growth. He learns from mistakes rather than dwelling on them. He embraces discomfort because he knows it signals evolution. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to elevate himself, to gain strength, to refine his vision, and to sharpen his focus. This is leveling up, turning what once held him back into a ladder to climb higher. Leveling up also requires resilience. Life has tested him in ways that might have broken others, but he has chosen not to break. He has faced loss, rejection, and disappointment head on. Instead of allowing these experiences to define him, he has allowed them to teach him. He has endured the pain, processed it, and converted it into determination. Every setback, every betrayal, every closed door has fueled a fire inside him that cannot be extinguished. This is not a man running from his past, this is a man mastering it. And in that mastery, he gains power, clarity, and momentum. Another crucial element of leveling up is self-mastery. He no longer allows emotions, opinions, or distractions to control him. He has learned patience, discipline, and the importance of consistency. He invests in himself physically, mentally, and emotionally. He surrounds himself with people, ideas, and experiences that elevate his potential. He has set boundaries that protect his energy and his growth. Every decision he makes is intentional, guided by his long-term vision. Leveling up is not about sudden change, it is about consistent, relentless progress. It is about choosing the high road when the low one is easier, and choosing the difficult path when it leads to greatness. Leveling up also means embracing responsibility. He no longer blames the past, other people, or circumstances for where he is. He takes full ownership of his life, his decisions, and his outcomes. He understands that empowerment comes from accountability. By accepting responsibility for his choices, he gains control over his future. By mastering himself, he masters his circumstances. By rising above the narratives of limitation, he becomes the architect of his own destiny. Leveling up is the ultimate act of self-respect, self-discipline, and self-belief. It is saying to the world and to himself, I am not defined by what happened to me, I am defined by what I choose to become. Finally, leveling up is visible not through words, but through presence. He walks differently, he speaks differently, he operates differently. There is an energy about him that cannot be faked, a quiet confidence forged through trials, reflection, and relentless effort. The world may not notice immediately, but those who have eyes to see will recognize the transformation. He is no longer the same man who endured the storms. He is stronger, wiser, calmer, and more focused. The past has not been forgotten, it has been repurposed. Pain has not defeated him, it has propelled him. Heartbreak has not stopped him, it has refined him. He hasn't moved on, he has leveled up, and everything he does now carries the weight and power of a man who has truly grown beyond what he once was. So, what is he really doing? He's not moving on, he's not forgetting, he's not running from the past, the pain, or the people who doubted him. He's rising, he's rebuilding, he's repurposing every heartbreak, every mistake, every setback, and turning it into fuel for the life he was always meant to live. He's focused when the world is distracted, disciplined when everyone else is drifting, and resilient when life keeps testing him. And the truth is this: you can't rush growth. You can't fake evolution. You can't create strength without struggle. Every quiet hour, every intentional decision, every moment of self-reflection is shaping him into someone unstoppable. The man you see today, calm, collected, and unshakable, is the product of trials he faced alone, lessons he learned quietly, and choices he made fiercely. So don't mistake his silence for weakness. Don't assume his distance means indifference. Don't believe that moving on is the same as leveling up, because the man who is truly rising doesn't need validation. He doesn't need applause. He doesn't even need your understanding. He needs only himself, his vision, his purpose, and his relentless will to become more than he was yesterday. And when he steps back into the world, stronger, wiser, and sharper people will realize the truth. He didn't just survive. He didn't just endure. He didn't just move on. He leveled up. So take this with you. Your past is not your prison. Your pain is not your defeat. Your struggles are not your limits. Use them. Transform them. Rise above them. Because the world doesn't wait for anyone but those who decide to rise. They rewrite the story entirely.